Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you as always for making this a part of your morning routines. It is very much appreciated. So I hope you had a good start to your weeks. We're halfway through. It's Wednesday. Means you've got today, tomorrow, and then it's the weekend, because Friday, as far as I'm concerned, it's a weekend day, because everyone's in the kind of mood on a Friday. It's just end of the week. It's chill. We've got football at the weekend. Well, most teams do. We don't. So we got to wait all the way through till Monday, unfortunately, for our game against Crystal Palace. But does mean, I suppose, you get the whole weekend without Arsenal ruining it. Not that they would, but, it's just one of those. So I've got, especially got to take the positives of these things. Good morning, everybody in the chat box. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. It is, as always, appreciated. Morgie, good morning to you, to Jacob, to Gooner Jake, good morning to Mr. E, to Amira, Black Shine, James, Jose, Olawale, Mr. E, we've already said hello to, Martin, Sean Lee, Stephen, Morgie, Steve, Johnny, Alan, Josh, who's been a member now for 5 months, fantastic stuff, and Jason as well, Trevor, and plenty more, Alan, Grantley Poos as well in the chat box as well. Plenty of you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It is very much appreciated. Simon Reed for the first time live. Welcome. Thank you for interacting. It means plenty. Addicted92 says, I'm here live from the beginning for once. Woohoo. Hello, everyone. Hope you're well. Indeed. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It is appreciated. Drop a like, subscribe, all of that lovely, fun stuff. Right then, let's crack on with today's story, shall we? We start with Matteo Guendouzi, believe it or not. Guendouzi costing Marseille a place in the Champions League after an Aubameyang double looked as though it had secured their kind of pathway through to the knockout stages of the competition. Playing against Panathinaikos, 2-0 up on the night after a 1-0 defeat in the first leg. Aubameyang scoring 2 very good goals, to be fair, and it'd be interesting to see how Aubameyang is at Marseille and how he gets on at Marseille this season. But Guendouzi I think it was the 100th minute, with several added minutes of injury time, handballing the ball and giving away a penalty, in which it then led to them scoring. And of course, then also going through extra time until penalties, where he then missed his penalty to give Panathinaikos the opportunity to score and win and knock Marseille out of the competition, and did. It's certainly one worth watching the highlights for. Contain plenty of Arsenal-related themes, both good and bad. Make sure you go and check it out. Kevin De Bruyne is going to be out for the foreseeable future until potentially, should he undergo surgery, until 2024 with what is described as a serious injury. It's a hamstring problem that took him out of their game against Burnley. And there are discussions going on about whether or not Kevin De Bruyne is having to undergo surgery. It kind of creates this, I suppose it creates this situation whereby we find ourselves debating whether De Bruyne is a bigger loss to City compared to what, Timber is to Arsenal. It's very close. And I think actually for me, that's what tells you how important Jurrien Timber has been this entire time. But both teams will be without key players for the foreseeable future due to injury. Arsenal will play Manchester City at the start of October, and neither side will have that. Now, Man City are looking at trying to bring in Lucas Paquetá from West Ham. Just sold your star once again. And I think that Paquetá doesn't necessarily give you the same level of performance or quality that De Bruyne does, but is a very good player still, it's fair to say. £80 million could be what it will take to do it. Will Arsenal replace Timber? I suppose we'll have to wait and see. Arsenal have, though, brought in and announced the signing of David Raya. David Raya joined the club, of course, as we know, on a season-long loan deal with an option to buy. It was revealed on the Brentford website, rather interestingly, because they want to provide clarity to their fans. Arsenal are a lot more cryptic in how we do things, but Brentford revealing that this is a deal that's designed to effectively give a situation whereby it will be permanent or made permanent as quickly as feasibly possible. But at the moment, it's a deal which could still see him return to Brentford if indeed Arsenal decide not to make this a permanent deal. But the loan is still a miraculous piece of brilliance, if you like, by Arsenal. And still, certainly, Edu should be praised for this move because it is incredibly astute piece of business by the club. Now, interestingly, as we often see here and there, little clues, hints as to what's going on behind the scenes at Arsenal with some of the players that could leave the club. Both following Balogun and Albert Zambi Lokonga pictured here, taking part in training alongside Alexander Zinchenko, who, of course, is now very, very close to returning to full fitness with the team and will hopefully be involved in some capacity in the coming games. But Balogun's involvement, Lokonga's involvement, what this means for their future, we don't know. It can mean plenty of different things, but Balogun, of course, is subject to interest from Monaco. We've turned one bid already down for the US men's national team striker. Lokonga's talks with Burnley seem to have broken down in the last week or so, and so at least for the moment, it looks like Lokonga may be staying with Arsenal. How many minutes he ends up getting is another thing, but you can imagine that he might take part in some of the cup games or Carabao Cup matches and FA Cup matches if he's still here for those. But it's very difficult to see where Lokonga is going to fit in right now. He does have, still, I think, 3 years or 3 seasons remaining on his current Arsenal contract. So there isn't a lot of pressure on the Lokonga situation. But Balogun's involvement is interesting. And it's not interesting in the sense that he's just not going to train. He is training, but looking and smiling and still waiting to find out what will happen with him in the near future. But Zinchenko is the big piece of that news, I think, and certainly close to returning as well. Arsenal and Newcastle are in contact over a deal for Kieran Tierney. Sky Sports reporting this yesterday. Newcastle said that supposedly their focus is on trying to sort out a loan for the player, whereas Kieran Tierney, obviously, I think at Arsenal as well, would prefer a permanent move. Whether or not the two clubs come to any kind of agreement between now and the end of the window remains to be seen. But we're hoping that Arsenal can secure a significant amount of money for Tierney if they do let him go. I know a lot of fans want to see him stay. We've talked about this at length before, but even Jurrien Timber's injury is not affecting whether or not Kieran Tierney will or not leave the club. It seems to have no impact at all on Kieran Tierney's future. So Tierney's still expected to leave the club before the window closes. And finally, according to Fabrizio Romano, last contact between Mohammed Kudus and Arsenal was made in late July. The Italian journalist suggesting that, who knows, maybe we'll see contact made between Arsenal and the player again. We know that West Ham are now recently interested. We know that despite Brighton agreeing a fee with Ajax initially, that deal has kind of cooled somewhat also. So we're still awaiting kind of final confirmation, if you like, on the potential to see if Arsenal will return for Mohammed Kudus and whether West Ham will be successful in their own moves for the player. But any price tag that needs to be agreed with Ajax will have to be higher than the 40 million euros that Brighton initially agreed with Ajax, because as Sven Mislintat says, the closer you get toward the end of the window, the higher the price tag goes. So if Arsenal want to move for the player, they're going to have to move quickly. But it was said that there was contact made between Arsenal and the player as recently as late July. So let's see if Arsenal revive that interest. I, for one, hope that they do. But I think that we can agree that there may be some priorities looking at the defensive area. We talked yesterday about João Cancelo, Emerick Laporte being potential targets. I did a piece yesterday looking at 2 other options, Mohamed Simakan and Benjamin Henrichs, who have been linked to the club this summer earlier on in the window before we signed Timber. Could we look at going in for either of the RB Leipzig defenders? Maybe. We'll have to wait and see. Right then, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, let's jump into the chat box, shall we, and see what questions we've got being thrown up. Lynn says, how likely could it be for Arteta to go after Cancelo or Laporte, or both, to replace Timber, knowing City doesn't want Cancelo at the club. I think that there's always, a chance that Arsenal might go back in for Laporte or Cancelo. The problem that Arsenal have is that there is certainly a reluctance, at least on Manchester City's side, to do a deal. I don't think that Arsenal, or rather, I don't think that City are too keen on helping Arsenal out with deals, because obviously they saw Zinchenko and Jesus' arrivals turn them into title challengers last year, and Arsenal are looking to build upon that. So, yeah, very difficult to see Arsenal and City coming to an agreement for something that would be a reasonable figure for either player, it seems. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Cody says, if we don't sell anyone, is there a chance that we rebid for Kudus? We haven't bid initially, so there's no rebid. But who knows? Maybe we'll open talks again and kind of revitalize those talks. I don't see it happening unless we sell Tierney and Balogun, says Cody. I think that Balogun's future could potentially be tied to an incoming. Of course, it's all about spots in the squad. Yes, Balogun counts as homegrown, but it's also about spots in the group, and you don't really want to fill a spot up that's already filled currently by one other. If Balogun ends up staying this summer, which, is still a small possibility that happens, he is a player that can be used, in competitions. Could be used in the Europa League, not Europa League. Wow, flashback. Could be used in the Champions League. Could be used in the cup competitions to keep his fitness up, keep his competitive levels up, and maybe even fight for a place in the Arsenal squad. Everyone's got to be given opportunities, of course. But I do somehow, not even somehow, but I think it's pretty clear that Balogun's future may be tied to us signing a forward player this summer. Lars says, hi, Tom. Any idea about who City will bring in? They look weaker. Yeah, it seems that Lucas Paquetá is the one that it will be. So let's wait and see if that ends up happening. Kirill says, no, not holding, starting rather at centre-back. I know Kirill's not a big fan, it seems, of... at least using Rob Holding. I know that a lot of fans do not want to see, ultimately don't want to see Arsenal have to get into a position whereby Holding is being a starting option for Arsenal again. I guess we'll have to wait and see if that ends up being the case. Christopher says, Tom, what did you think about Micah Richards' comments about Arsenal being basically out of the title race after Jesus' injury, considering he's only out for a few weeks? Is it a bit short-sighted? Maybe so. Maybe Micah's trying to rule us out, just get a little bit of a full sense of security going for his colleagues at Sky, like Gary Neville. Gary Neville, of course, tipping Arsenal potentially as title challengers himself. But maybe it's a bit short-sighted, because I do think that we can, for at least a short period of time, get plenty of points. And, we still managed to pick up plenty of points without Jesus. And actually, our title challenge collapsed when Jesus came back, ironically, rather than when he was unavailable. So I don't think that necessarily that is the case, if that's what Micah believes. Let's go to Richard says, any chance of Mitoma coming to Arsenal? I very, very highly doubt it. Marcus says, Holding to Villa. Have you any news on that? No, not really. Nothing that's been suggested too heavily at all. I think that maybe he's linked to Unai Emery, but I think there were kind of suggestions that maybe he'd been inquired about by Villa, and Arsenal want a sizable fee, but no, nothing on that at all at the moment. Ian says City will get Goku. Isn't that someone from Dragon Ball Z? I'm pretty sure it's Doku, isn't it? I think it's Jeremy Doku, I think Ian means. He's being linked with a move to Man City, yes, but West Ham, there's been reports yesterday, may try and hijack that deal if they can do that. So let's watch this space on that one. Avinash says, with Chelsea now committed to expose the futility of FFP, is football now just a money buys success story? What are your thoughts on it? Well, I think that it has been explained on a number of platforms why Chelsea so far are not actually breaking FFP. The number of sales they'd made in this season and this summer in particular has offset the amortization of deals that they're making over the next 5 years, and in some case over the next 7 years, regarding players like Mudryk and Kunku, I think, etc. But players that were signed this season, of course, or announced this season, I'm not sure if Kunku counts in that, because of course it was agreed before this summer, but players that were signed this summer will see their deals amortized over the next 5 years. Players that were signed prior to this, that were signed on 8-year contracts, will see their deals amortized over 8 years until the loophole was closed. But now, because they sold so many players, they are actually offsetting that amortization. However, they're not going to be able to make 250 odd million quid. You would think, never rule that out. They've brought in so many young players that maybe they'll be making profits on those players in the coming seasons. They're very good at selling our Chelsea in some ways, making big money for certain players, but they are at the moment not breaking FFP. That is the rule at the moment, but maybe that will change. Byron says, Tom, are there any youth prospects that could come in at fullback? We are not using Tavares or Tierney. I think we are close to our FFP limit to buy. Rule Waters and Lino Souza are certainly two players that we should be looking to as potential ones for the future. Very exciting players. So let's wait and see. P Sharp says losing Timber is massive, a massive blow for any length of time, as he looked incredible. But let's keep fingers crossed it's not as bad as speculation suggests. Sadly, P Sharp, I think that it probably is. Of course, we are waiting for confirmation, but reliable reports in the Netherlands who are close to the players' camp via Mark Vivak are suggesting that it is an ACL, which is not good. James Benge saying yesterday that he expects it to be around at least 7 months and that he'd be surprised if we even see him again this season. So very difficult to see him coming back. And I think that if Arsenal are smart, they would go out and sign somebody now. Eddie says, morning, Tom. I still think Arsenal are short a Giroud-esque player from dominating the league. What do you think? I don't think there is a Giroud-esque player for Arsenal really to go and get that's worth the investment. I think Kai Havertz offers us some verticality and height up top. If we want to put some balls into the box, you've got Kai Havertz in there to add some height in there. But I just don't think there is a Giroud-type player that Arsenal have got. And bear in mind that Man City dominated the Premier League for many years prior to the arrival of Erling Haaland without a tall striker. So you don't necessarily need a tall striker to be able to do that. says we need a centre-back / fullback in place of Timber. I agree. Marcus says, do you think we will sign a Kudus replacement and a Saka competitor? If we don't sign Kudus, are we going to get an alternative? I hope so. Do I think so? My expectations over a forward signing have dipped in relation to the Yuri and Timber situation. And of course, with how our sales are continuing to go on still at this kind of phase. We're still waiting to get some confirmation about exits. And whilst Balogun is here, I don't think that cog is going to turn, if you like, until we see that deal happen. So let's wait and see. But hopefully we see another couple of signings come in the defensive and forward line. Let's go to Daniel says I'd go for Mark Gehi and then full-time convert Ben White to a right back. It's potentially an option that we could have. Fuad says if Arsenal don't do anything from now until the window with no defender coming in and Timber out, how do you see the season going realistically? Also, let's go Lionesses. Yes, indeed, hoping to get to past Australia. I can't stand Sam Kerr, so I'm really hoping that England can get a win over Australia today. Fingers crossed. In terms of how do I see the season going if we don't bring any other players in? It's a risk. We've strengthened with Declan Rice and Kai Havertz and David Raya, but I do think that we need that defender in. I don't think that Tomiyasu or Saliba are yet back at full fitness entirely, and there's always the risk that they could be injured again. So it has affected, sadly, the state of the window, but it also is a bit dependent upon what Arsenal can do regarding financial fair play. For those people that are worried, well, how can Chelsea spend all this money? And yet Arsenal are the ones having spent a lot less as to why we can't spend as much because of FFP. Arsenal have not sold anywhere near as many players for the amount of money that Chelsea have sold players for in the last fair few seasons. That is the reason behind why there are FFP associations with us and restrictions why there isn't with Chelsea. Next, it says Tom Volland has been sold from Monaco, so let's see what happens. Should we go on for Neto if Kudus doesn't happen? Neto looked good for Wolves against Manchester United. He has been linked with Arsenal in the past, of course, as we know. Will Arsenal revive interest in Neto? Who knows? I certainly haven't heard anything to suggest that we have yet, but he has been a player that Arsenal have liked in the past. Maybe we'll go in for him in the near future, but there is those big injury concerns with Neto that still very much exist. Lynn says, Tom, with an injury like Arsenal have just got with Timber, would you feel that we should be able to go to the market without being hit by FFP because it's like an insurance injuries happen? No, sadly not. There wouldn't have been expectation that Timber would have got such a significant injury, so they wouldn't, I don't think, have planned for that, which is really, really frustrating. Seb says it's 3:15 a.m. in New York. So apologies if you have covered this topic already. No problem, Seb. What are the chances of Tierney covering for Timber? Is it impossible for him to cover? It's not impossible for him to cover. At right back it is. But at left back it's not. But he doesn't play the same style. And I do expect him still to move on this summer. I don't think the Timber injury has changed the situation with Kieran Tierney, which I know is not what a lot of people want to hear because they really like Kieran Tierney, would like him to stay, but it doesn't seem like that is going to be the case. Baldes says, would you have spent that 210 million differently? I mean, it's really easy to say with the benefit of hindsight that I would have spent it differently, knowing that Timber was now injured. But to be honest, no. I know a lot of people say that we should have spent that 65 million on Havertz elsewhere. I'm really excited to see what Havertz can bring to the team. And when he gets going and firing and he gets his confidence up and he's fully a transition to the team, I look forward to seeing what he did. We needed to bring an attacking player, and we've done that, who can also be versatile enough to play at centre forward if we need him to. We needed to bring in Declan Rice. That was absolutely a necessity. We had to bring in a defender, and we did that in Timber, and it just sucks that we've now lost him, and hopefully Arsenal can bring in another one before the window closes. They're bringing in David Raya, adds real competition to an area that so many fans I saw saying still weren't convinced necessarily by Ramsdale, even though I was, but still felt that we need competition there, and we've got that in. So no, I don't think I would spend it all that differently, but it is easy to say that with the benefit of hindsight that we would now. But no, I'm not too differently, to be honest. I think the profiles of players that we signed, the positions that we signed in, all positions and profiles that we needed to add in this window. Maximir says, hi, Tom. Considering that UEFA brought the restrictions on amortization thanks to Chelsea misusing it, why was the FA so late? I think it was more the Premier League than the FA, is it not? I think it's more the Premier League. I might be wrong. Shouldn't the FA have shown more intention to level the playing field? Maybe. Maybe they should have been quicker, arguably. Maybe we should have fallen in line with UEFA in trying to close those gaps, because it's sadly had a bit of an impact on the ability of Chelsea to do what they're doing. That said, you can't really have a go at Chelsea for what they're doing in some ways, because they are abiding by the restrictions set by those that make the rules. So at the same time, yes, we can get annoyed at what they do, but also if it was Arsenal doing it, we'd be arguing that we're staying within the confines of the rules at the same time. So it's a two-way street. Let's go scrolling down a little bit more. Lamin says, I think we need to win in attack and get Kudus to keep the squad as it is. As I said before, I would like us to bring in a forward. Marcus says, did you reach the bar bill requirement at the show? Pennyween, Mike and Owen did their best bit. Don't know yet, actually. I haven't actually got the final numbers. Still waiting to find that out. Roger says, morning, Tom. We'll be okay. Hopefully the lesser spotted Zinchenko comes back for a couple of games between injuries. I hope that Zinchenko comes back when he's fully fit and ready. That's ultimately what we're waiting for. Some breaking news for you on Aymeric Laporte. Manchester City have accepted an offer from Al Nassr for Laporte, the 29 Spain centre-back, into the final 2 years of his contract and thought to be open to the possibility. Man City are willing to sell, with the Saudi Pro League club Al Nassr, of course, where Cristiano Ronaldo plays, pushing to get the deal done. No word on a kind of price tag at this stage regarding Laporte yet, but there's some breaking news for you on Laporte. Looks like he's moving to Al Nassr potentially after City accepted a bid and have replaced him, of course, already with Joska Gvardiol, 29 years of age. So I'm not sure that he fit the profile that Arsenal were looking for in terms of age. So it looks like Laporte is off to Al Nassr. Let's go to Tito. Says, I don't get it that Arteta just doesn't like KT, or what? Because Timber is injured and KT is a good player, so why can't he use him? He could use him, but Tierney doesn't fit the style that Arteta likes in a left-sided fullback, sadly. That's just the situation that we find ourselves in. Tierney is a good player. Arteta has said as much as a good player, but if you don't have the right shape for the right hole, I think we've got to try and change that. So many people have said for so long that we've tried to fit square pegs in round holes, and I know that this is more of kind of a square with curved edges, if you like, as a left back trying to play left back, but it's not the left back style that Arteta looks for, and so ultimately Arteta wants one that fits his philosophy of a defender, and apparently Tierney is not that player. Luid says, Brooke Norton-Cuffy is the most experienced of our youth fullbacks. He is, but he still is rather raw. I would put Raw Waters ahead of Brook Norton-Cuffy in the sense of who has the better chance of getting into the Arsenal senior squad. I think Roy Waters has got a better chance to Brook Norton-Cuffy at this moment in time. Amira says, does Timber's injury somewhat prove that many Arsenal fans have new toy syndrome, or was he really that exceptional? Yes, he's been great, but the injury isn't catastrophic. We still have a squad of 20 plus. The injury is without a doubt catastrophic. It's a really, really, really damaging injury. And if the same thing happens to us last season and happens to us this season, with Saliba and Tomiyasu being out, we are in big trouble again because of Timber's long-term injury. He is that good. He is exceptional. It's not a case of new toy syndrome. The reason why we're not as worried about it is because he was playing at left back and we've got 3 other options, technically 4 with Tierney still being here. So that's the reason as to why we are. It's not maybe as catastrophic as it could have been, but it is still a catastrophic hit to Arsenal losing a player of that level. Olu says, hey, Tom, with De Bruyne out, how will you rate City's midfield? I think Newcastle's might be better and ahead of theirs. They, of course, have Rodri, who for me is the best number 6 in the world, the best defensive midfielder in the world. So it can't be that bad. They then got, I suppose they can use Phil Foden in that left 8 role. They've brought in Matteo Kovacic as well, who's a very good player. And they look like they're going to be bringing in Lucas Paquetá, and they can play Bernardo Silva at 10 as well, who is also another amazing player. So I don't think it's too bad, Olu, and I don't think Newcastle's is better, no. Daniel says, instead of playing an inverted fullback, if Zinchenko is still out, why not just commit fully to a 3-2-4-1 double pivot? White, Saliba and Gabriel in a back 3 with Partey and Rice and a double pivot in the midfield. And then you can go with, I don't know, Odegaard and Havertz, Saka and Martinelli, and then the striker, I suppose, up top. Maybe there's an option, the back 3, but I think we've got so many options to play left back, and that system is becoming so established that we don't need to change things up too dramatically. But it's an option, and it's certainly there. Carl says, come on, guys, let's stop crying about Chelsea's business and concentrate on Arsenal. Martin says, Mayor, I think our defence is still as reliable as a split. Goodness me. It isn't about personnel. It's the style of play. We carry on gifting goals. We win nothing. I don't think that that's a fair comment at all. I mean, considering the fact that we have improved our defence significantly and we've got players as good as Gabriel, Saliba, White, Zinchenko, Kvyat in the team, Tomiyasu for depth as well, I don't think that's a fair simile. And how rude. How incredibly rude, Martin. Lynn says, Tom, would you say that he was carrying this when he came to Arsenal and Saturday was the last straw? No, I don't think so. ACLs are very unpredictable. They can happen in split moments. They can happen just a certain turn or twist of a knee. They are very, very spontaneous. Sure, maybe they can be weakened, I guess, in some ways, but I'd be very surprised if this was anything other than a very spontaneous thing. So there you go. Zeno says, Arteta makes the simple game look complicated. Why? Because he knows more about football than us, Zeno. That's the reason. He knows more about football than we do. Marcus says, is Bailey available? Would add some height up front. He would indeed. Bailey would certainly add some verticality to Arsenal's team. But finishing ability, questionable. Josh says, hey, Tom, when will the 3rd kit be released? Don't know. It was delayed, so I don't actually know when they're releasing the 3rd kit. Hopefully very soon. Cass says, with Jesus being injured, do you think for next season Arteta will be looking to bring in a striker? I think next summer was always maybe somewhere and when we would look to bring in a top striker. This summer, not really. I think that we had priorities elsewhere, but I think that a striker next summer certainly could be on the cards. I'd love us to look to bring in a really, really top striker. I'd love to see that happen next season. I think that's the way forwards. Nick says, blame the USA preseason pitches. If anyone can tell me how a pitch in the States can translate to an ACL happening, weeks later, I'm all ears. But until someone can give me an explanation of how that happens or how they know that it's a contribution, I'd love to. Because as someone who has, done their ACL themselves, there's plenty of experience in that field and speaking to specialists in that field. It's more to do, I think, with fatigue than anything else, and to do with the number of games that play as a factor rather than the specific pitches that the players aren't playing on when they actually do the ACL. But if anyone has a reason or some kind of scientific explanation, let me know. So, yeah, let's wait and see. Marcus says, under 100 likes and over 1,000 of you watching. That is not a good stat. We need to get our conversion rate up, people. So make sure if you haven't already hit the like button, you do so. Maya says, now I'm tempted to play Saka in the Zinchenko role with Smith Rowe in the Xhaka role and Trossard up front. We're changing things dramatically when we don't necessarily need to. So, yeah, let's wait and see. Court says, is it me or is Tom's camera a bit to the left? It is a bit, yeah. I was trying to show off the TGT logo, but I'm not doing a very good job. I suppose that's better. There we go. Shane says, Tom, I just wish Emile Smith-Rowe, I assume that's who that is, would get more game time. I think people seriously forget how good he was before he got injured. He scored roughly 11 goals in the first half of a season before that injury. He is very talented, but he has got to fight for his place back, and he hasn't so far been able to do that. So we have to see if he can indeed succeed in pushing to get back into the side. But I'm hopeful that we will see plenty of Smith Rowe this season. We got plenty of football to play. And so hopefully we will see Smith Rowe back in the side very, very soon. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. It's very much appreciated. I hope that you've had a fantastic morning. I hope that you had a great day. And I'll be back, of course, tomorrow morning with further updates surrounding the club. I'll also be back on the Arsenal Way in just under an hour and a half's time. Have a brilliant day. Stay safe, stay well, and as always, and most importantly, up the Arsenal.